The crystal chandelier above Ethan Rodriguez cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of his empty dining room. 35 candles flickered on a chocolate cake that would remain untouched, their wax slowly dripping onto the gold-rimmed plate below. The silence in the room was not just quiet, it was the kind of crushing, absolute silence that pressed against your chest and made breathing feel like work. Ethan sat alone at the head of a table built for 12, his dark eyes staring at the cake his housekeeper had left before disappearing for the weekend. She had written "Happy Birthday, Mr. Rodriguez" in elegant blue frosting, but the words felt hollow, meaningless. What was happy about spending another birthday with only his own thoughts for company? The mansion around him was worth $15 million. The cars in his garage cost more than most people's houses. His bank account had numbers that most could only dream of. Yet here he was, a successful tech entrepreneur who had built an empire, sitting in complete isolation on the day he was born 35 years ago. Ethan's hands moved slowly, forming the words in sign language that no one was there to see. "Happy birthday to me." The gesture felt ridiculous in the empty space. He had been signing to himself for years now, keeping his language alive even when no one else in his world understood it. The loneliness was not new, but tonight it felt different. Heavier. More permanent. He thought about his parents who had stopped visiting years ago because communicating with him felt too difficult. He remembered his ex-wife, who had left him because she said living with someone deaf was exhausting. Even his business partners only interacted with him through interpreters and written notes, treating him like a problem to solve rather than a person to know. His phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, his heart lifted, thinking someone might have remembered his birthday. But it was just an automated reminder about a business meeting on Monday. No friends. No family. No one who cared enough to remember that today was supposed to be special. Ethan pushed back from the table, leaving the cake untouched. He walked through rooms filled with expensive art and furniture, each space perfectly decorated and completely empty of human warmth. In his study, awards and newspaper clippings covered the walls, documenting his success in building one of the country's largest assistive technology companies. Young Entrepreneur of the Year. Innovation in Accessibility. Breaking Barriers in Tech. What the articles did not mention was how he went home to silence every night. How he had achieved everything he thought he wanted, only to discover that success without someone to share it with felt like failure. He stopped in front of a mirror in the hallway. The reflection showed a handsome man with warm brown skin and carefully styled black hair, wearing an expensive blue shirt that brought out his eyes. He looked successful, confident, put together. But his eyes told a different story. They held a sadness that money could not fix and achievements could not heal. The truth was simple and devastating. Ethan Rodriguez had everything and nothing at all. Have you ever felt so lonely that even your own success feels empty? If this story is already pulling at your heartstrings, imagine how much more emotional it gets. Subscribe now and comment below. Do you think someone can truly find love when they feel completely invisible to the world? As the candles burned lower in the dining room, Ethan made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow he would leave his mansion. Tomorrow he would venture into the world beyond his comfortable, silent prison. He had no idea that this choice would lead him to the most important encounter of his life. But tonight he was still alone, watching his birthday candles burn down to nothing, just like every year before. The morning sun felt strange on Ethan's face as he walked through Riverside Park. He could not remember the last time he had taken a walk without a destination, without a purpose beyond simply being outside. His usual routine involved cars with drivers, private entrances, and carefully controlled environments where his deafness would not become an inconvenience for others. Today was different. Today he wore simple jeans and a bright red sweater instead of his usual business suits. He had told his driver to wait at the mansion and had walked the 12 blocks to the park himself, something he had not done since he was a teenager. The park was alive with weekend activity. Families spread blankets on the grass for picnics. Children ran between trees, their laughter visible in their expressions even though Ethan could not hear their joy. Couples walked hand in hand along the paved paths. Everyone seemed connected to someone else, part of a larger tapestry of human relationships that Ethan observed from the outside. He found an empty bench near the playground and sat down, watching the world move around him. A father pushed his daughter on a swing set. A group of teenagers played frisbee on the open grass. An elderly couple fed ducks by the small pond. All of these interactions happened in a world of sound that Ethan could not access, but he could see the connections, the bonds, the love that tied these people together. That was when he saw her. A woman with beautiful dark skin and natural hair pulled back in a colorful headband was sitting on a blanket about 50 feet away. She wore a bright green dress that made her stand out like a flower in the garden of people around her. But what caught Ethan's attention was not her beauty, though she was undeniably lovely. It was what she was doing with her hands. She was signing. Ethan's heart began to race as he watched her graceful fingers form words in American Sign Language. She was communicating with a young boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, who had the same warm brown skin and bright smile. The child was signing back to her, their conversation flowing naturally and beautifully in the visual language that Ethan had thought he might never see used by strangers again. For several minutes, Ethan simply watched, afraid to believe what he was seeing. In 5 years of living in this city, he had never encountered another person using sign language in public. His world had been filled with interpreters for business meetings and written notes passed back and forth, but never this, never the natural, easy communication between two people who shared his language. The woman laughed at something the boy signed, her face lighting up with genuine joy. The sight of it made Ethan's chest tight with an emotion he could not name. When was the last time someone had looked at him with that kind of unguarded happiness? When was the last time he had been part of a conversation that flowed so easily, so naturally? Before he could talk himself out of it, Ethan stood up from the bench. His hands were shaking slightly as he walked across the grass toward the woman and child. He had no plan, no idea what he would say. He only knew that he needed to be closer to this miracle of communication that had appeared in his life like an answer to a prayer he had not known he was making. As he approached, the woman looked up at him. Her eyes were kind but cautious, the way any mother would look at a stranger approaching her child in a public place. The boy turned to see what had caught his mother's attention, and Ethan could see that the child's eyes held the same alertness that he recognized in other deaf individuals, the heightened visual awareness that came from navigating a world designed for hearing people. Ethan stopped a respectful distance away and raised his hands. His fingers moved carefully, forming the words he had not used to communicate with new people in longer than he could remember. "Hello," he signed. "I am sorry to interrupt. I could not help but notice you signing. I am deaf too." The woman's eyes widened in surprise, and then her face broke into the most beautiful smile Ethan had ever seen. She responded immediately in sign language, her movements fluid and natural. "Hello. Please do not apologize. It is wonderful to meet you. I am Naomi and this is my son Tyler." Tyler waved enthusiastically, clearly excited to meet another person who could communicate in his language. "Are you really deaf like me?" the boy signed with the direct curiosity that only children possessed. "Yes," Ethan replied, and suddenly the park felt warmer, brighter, more alive than it had moments before. "Just like you." For the first time in years, Ethan was having a conversation where he did not feel like a burden, where communication felt natural and easy, where he was not explaining his deafness or making others uncomfortable with his difference. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like he belonged somewhere. "How long have you been signing?" Naomi asked, her hands moving with the grace of someone completely comfortable in the language. Ethan settled onto the grass near their blanket, careful to maintain a respectful distance while still being part of the conversation. "Since I was 12, he replied. "I lost my hearing in a car accident. What about you? Are you deaf too?" Naomi shook her head, her expression growing soft as she glanced at Tyler, who was building something with blocks he had pulled from a small backpack. "No, I am hearing. I learned sign language when Tyler was born deaf. I wanted to make sure we could always communicate no matter what." The simple statement hit Ethan with unexpected force. Here was a hearing mother who had learned an entire language just to talk with her son. In his experience, even deaf parents sometimes struggled to maintain sign language in their families, and hearing parents often chose spoken language and hearing aids over signing. But Naomi had embraced Tyler's deafness completely. "That is amazing," Ethan signed, and he meant it. Most hearing parents take the easy path," Naomi finished for him, her smile turning a bit sad. "They want their deaf children to fit into the hearing world instead of meeting them where they are. I decided early on that Tyler's deafness was not a problem to fix. It was just part of who he is." Tyler looked up from his blocks and grinned at Ethan. "Mom learned sign language super fast," he signed with obvious pride. "She says she wanted to know everything I was thinking." "And do you tell her everything you think?" Ethan asked the boy, genuinely curious. Tyler's grin became mischievous. "Almost everything. Sometimes I sign bad words when she is not looking." Naomi laughed and playfully swatted at Tyler's hands. "I saw that," she signed. "And I know all the bad words too, so do not think you can get away with anything." Watching the easy affection between mother and son, Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. This was what family looked like. This was what love looked like when it was not complicated by frustration or embarrassment or the constant struggle to communicate across different worlds. Do you have children? Naomi asked him. No, Ethan replied, the single word carrying more weight than he intended. I was married once, but it did not work out. He did not add that his ex-wife had complained constantly about his deafness, that she had made him feel like a burden, that she had left him for a hearing man who would be easier to be with. Some pain was too private to share with strangers, even kind ones. I am sorry, Naomi said, her expression genuinely sympathetic. Relationships can be hard when people do not understand. Yes, Ethan agreed. They can be. Tyler had moved closer to Ethan, clearly fascinated by this new adult who could communicate in his language. What do you do for work? He asked. I run a company that makes technology for deaf and hard of hearing people, Ethan explained. We create devices that help people like us communicate with the hearing world. Tyler's eyes went wide. That is so cool. Do you make hearing aids? Sometimes. But mostly we make things like video phones for sign language calls, and alert systems for deaf people's homes, and apps that translate speech to text in real time. Wow, Tyler sighed, clearly impressed. You must be really smart. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest that he had not experienced in years. When was the last time someone had looked at him with such uncomplicated admiration? I try to be, he replied with a small smile. Naomi was watching the interaction between Ethan and Tyler with an expression he could not quite read. Tyler loves meeting other deaf adults, she explained. He does not have many role models who share his experience. There are not many of us in visible positions, Ethan acknowledged. At least not many who are open about being deaf. Why not? Tyler asked with the directness of childhood. It was a complex question with a complex answer. Sometimes people think being deaf means you cannot do important jobs, Ethan said carefully. They think we need too much help or that we cannot communicate well enough. So some deaf people hide their deafness to get opportunities. That is dumb, Tyler sighed with the firm conviction of an 8-year-old. Yes, Ethan agreed. It is. Naomi checked her phone and sighed. We should start heading home soon. Tyler has homework to finish before tomorrow. Ah, Mom, Tyler protested, but he began packing up his blocks without further argument. As they prepared to leave, Ethan felt a familiar panic rising in his chest. This moment of connection was ending, and he would return to his silent world while Naomi and Tyler went back to their life together. The loneliness he had temporarily forgotten came rushing back. Wait, he sighed, then stopped, unsure how to continue. Naomi paused, unfolding their blanket. Yes. Would you like to get coffee sometime? The words felt clumsy coming from his hands. Or ice cream for Tyler. It has been a long time since I met other people who sign. Naomi's smile was gentle and understanding. We would like that very much, she replied. Would tomorrow afternoon work? Tyler gets out of school at 3. Relief flooded through Ethan so powerfully that he almost laughed. Yes, tomorrow would be perfect. As they exchanged phone numbers and made plans to meet at a cafe near Tyler's school, Ethan realized something had changed in the space of an hour. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he had something to look forward to. The cafe Naomi had chosen was small and cozy, with mismatched furniture and local artwork covering the walls. Ethan arrived early, his nerves making him restless as he claimed a corner table with good lighting. He had changed clothes 3 times that morning, finally settling on dark jeans and a bright blue button-down shirt that he hoped looked casual but not sloppy. When Naomi and Tyler walked through the door, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Naomi wore a red dress that brought out the warmth in her dark skin, and her hair was styled in neat braids that framed her face beautifully. Tyler bounced beside her in a green t-shirt and jeans, his school backpack still slung over one shoulder. Sorry we are a little late, Naomi sighed as they approached his table. Tyler's school bus was delayed. No problem at all, Ethan replied, standing to pull out chairs for them. I just got here myself. It was a small lie. He had been sitting at the table for 20 minutes, but he did not want them to know how eager he had been for this meeting. Tyler immediately claimed the seat next to Ethan, his eyes bright with curiosity. Can I see your phone? He asked. Mom says you probably have cool apps for deaf people. Ethan pulled out his phone and opened one of his company's applications. This one translates speech to text in real time, he explained, setting the phone on the table. Watch. A woman at a nearby table was talking to her friend about weekend plans. Her words appeared on Ethan's phone screen almost instantly. I think we should go to the farmer's market on Saturday morning. Tyler's mouth fell open in amazement. That is so cool. Can it understand anyone? Most people, as long as they speak clearly, Ethan said. It is not perfect, but it helps in situations where sign language interpreters are not available. Naomi leaned forward to look at the phone, her shoulder brushing against Ethan's arm. The brief contact sent an unexpected jolt through him. This is incredible, she signed. How long did it take to develop? About 3 years, Ethan replied, trying to focus on the conversation instead of how good Naomi smelled like vanilla and something floral. My team had to train the artificial intelligence to recognize different accents and speaking patterns. You have a team? Tyler asked. About 40 people work for my company, Ethan said. Engineers, designers, customer service representatives, salespeople. Most of them are deaf or hard of hearing. Wow, Tyler sighed. You are like a boss. Ethan laughed, surprised by how natural it felt. I suppose I am. But everyone on the team is important. I could not do any of it alone. A server approached their table, notepad ready. Ethan tensed slightly, preparing for the awkward interaction that always came when hearing people tried to communicate with him in public places. But Naomi immediately took charge, speaking aloud while simultaneously signing for Ethan's benefit. We would like 2 coffees and a hot chocolate for Tyler, please, she said to the server, then turned to Ethan. What kind of coffee would you like? Black coffee is fine, he signed, and Naomi translated. And Tyler, what do you want to eat? Naomi asked. Chocolate chip cookies, the boy replied, and Naomi ordered them along with a blueberry muffin for herself. The entire interaction took less than 2 minutes, but it moved Ethan deeply. Naomi had effortlessly bridged the communication gap without making him feel excluded or burdensome. She had treated his deafness as simply another language difference to navigate, not a problem to solve. You are very good at that, he told her after the server left. Good at what? Including me. Making communication easy. Most hearing people. He paused, trying to find the right words. Most hearing people either ignore me completely or treat me like I cannot think for myself. Naomi's expression grew serious. That must be incredibly frustrating. It is, Ethan admitted. I have learned to expect it, but it never stops being hurtful. Tyler had been listening to their conversation and now he spoke up. Some kids at school are mean to me too, he signed. They think I am stupid because I cannot hear them. Ethan felt a surge of protective anger on Tyler's behalf. You are not stupid, he said firmly. You are smart and funny and kind. Anyone who thinks differently is the one with the problem. That is what Mom always tells me, Tyler replied, grinning. Your mom is right, Ethan said, glancing at Naomi. She is very wise. Naomi blushed, the color rising in her cheeks in a way that made Ethan's heart skip. I just try to give Tyler the confidence to be himself in a world that does not always understand him. How did you learn sign language so quickly? Ethan asked. It usually takes hearing people years to become fluent. I was motivated, Naomi said simply. When Tyler was born and we learned he was deaf, I knew I had 2 choices. I could feel sorry for myself and him, or I could learn everything I needed to help him thrive. I chose option 2. What about Tyler's father? Ethan asked gently, then immediately regretted the question when he saw Naomi's expression close off slightly. He chose option 1, she said quietly. He decided that having a deaf son was too much work. Tyler's face grew sad, and he leaned against his mother's side. Naomi wrapped her arm around him, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. I am sorry, Ethan signed. I should not have asked. It is okay, Naomi replied. We are better off without him. Tyler and I make a good team. The best team, Tyler agreed, his smile returning. The server brought their drinks and food, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Tyler told Ethan about his favorite subjects in school, math and art, and his least favorite, writing, because his teacher did not understand sign language and made him work twice as hard as the other students. Naomi talked about her job at a local hospital, where she worked in the billing department during the day and cleaned offices at night to make ends meet. You work 2 jobs? Ethan asked, surprised. Sometimes 3, Naomi said matter-of-factly. Tyler's education is expensive. He goes to a special program for deaf students, and the transportation costs alone are significant. Plus we are saving for hearing aids and speech therapy, even though Tyler does not want them. I do not need to hear, Tyler said firmly. I like being deaf. I know, baby, Naomi said, stroking his hair. But I want you to have choices when you get older. I want you to have every possible opportunity. Ethan felt something twist in his chest as he watched this beautiful woman work so hard to give her son every advantage while asking for nothing for herself. The 2 jobs, the careful budgeting, the constant worry about Tyler's future, it was all so different from his own life of abundance and ease. What if? He began, then stopped himself. He had been about to offer help, but something held him back. Too many times in his life, people had assumed he needed charity because of his disability. He did not want to insult Naomi the same way by suggesting she could not take care of her own family. What if what? Naomi prompted gently. Nothing, he said. I was just thinking. But the idea would not leave his mind. Here was a woman sacrificing everything for her child's future, while he had more money than he could spend in a lifetime and no one to spend it on. Surely there was a way to help without being patronizing. Surely there was a way to make their lives easier while respecting their independence. As they finished their coffee and prepared to leave, Ethan found himself reluctant to end the afternoon. In the span of 2 hours he had laughed more than he had in months. He had felt useful and valued and understood. He had remembered what it felt like to be part of a conversation instead of an observer on the outside. Can we do this again soon? He asked as they gathered their coats. Yes, Naomi replied without hesitation. Tyler and I would like that very much. How about dinner on Friday? Ethan suggested. My treat. You do not have to pay, Naomi protested, but Ethan waved off her concerns. I want to, he said simply. Please let me. Naomi studied his face for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Thank you. As they walked out of the cafe together, Tyler between them chattering about his upcoming school project, Ethan felt something he had almost forgotten existed. Hope. For the first time in years he was excited about the future, curious about what tomorrow might bring. For the first time in years he was not alone. Friday arrived with an unusual spring in Ethan's step. He had spent the week thinking about Naomi and Tyler, replaying their conversations and looking forward to dinner with an anticipation that surprised him. He chose a family-friendly restaurant with good lighting and a quiet atmosphere, knowing that loud environments made sign language conversations difficult even for deaf people. Naomi arrived wearing a bright yellow dress that made her look like sunshine. Tyler had traded his usual casual clothes for khakis and a blue button-down shirt, clearly excited about their dinner out. You both look wonderful, Ethan signed as they were seated at a corner booth. Mom made me wear nice clothes, Tyler confessed with a grin. She said we were going somewhere fancy. This is fancy for us, Naomi added, glancing around the restaurant with appreciation. We usually eat at home or grab fast food between my jobs. As they looked over the menus, Ethan noticed Tyler struggling to read some of the words. The boy was clearly bright, but his reading level seemed behind what Ethan would expect for an 8-year-old. Do you need help with anything? Ethan offered gently. Tyler's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I am not a very good reader, he admitted. My school says I am behind the other kids. That is not your fault, Naomi said firmly, but Ethan could see the worry in her eyes. Tyler's school does not have enough resources for deaf students. He has to work with a regular teacher who does not sign, plus a part-time interpreter who is shared among 4 children. Ethan felt his heart clench. He knew how crucial early education was for deaf children, how the right support could mean the difference between thriving and struggling for the rest of their lives. Have you looked into other schools? He asked carefully. The good programs are private and expensive, Naomi said. There is a school about an hour away that specializes in deaf education. They have small classes, teachers who sign fluently, and a curriculum designed specifically for deaf students. But the tuition is... She paused, clearly uncomfortable discussing money. It is more than I make in a year. Tyler had gone back to studying his menu, pretending not to listen to the adult conversation, but Ethan could see the boy's shoulders tense. Even at 8 years old, Tyler understood that his education was a source of stress for his mother. What is the name of the school? Ethan asked. Riverside Academy for the Deaf, Naomi replied. Why? Ethan knew the school well. His company had donated equipment to them several times, and he served on their advisory board. It was an excellent institution with a reputation for helping deaf students achieve at the highest levels. I know that school, he said. It is one of the best in the country. I researched it online, Naomi said wistfully. They have a waiting list, but even if Tyler got accepted, I could never afford it. An idea had been forming in Ethan's mind all week, and now it crystallized into a clear plan. He had been looking for a way to help without being condescending, and here was the perfect opportunity. What if there was a way for Tyler to attend Riverside Academy? He asked quietly. Naomi's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Ethan took a deep breath, knowing he had to present this carefully. My company has a scholarship fund for deaf students. We provide full tuition assistance to children who show academic promise but whose families cannot afford private education. It was not entirely true, the scholarship fund existed, but it was small and already fully committed for the year. But Ethan could easily expand it, fund it personally if necessary. The important thing was giving Naomi a way to accept help without feeling like charity. Are you serious? Naomi's hands moved slowly, as if she was afraid to believe what he was telling her. Completely serious, Ethan replied. Tyler is exactly the kind of student the scholarship was designed to help. Bright, motivated, held back only by lack of resources. Tyler had looked up from his menu, following the conversation with growing excitement. Does that mean I could go to a school with other deaf kids? He asked. Yes, Ethan said, smiling at the boy's enthusiasm. A school where all the teachers sign, where you would not be the only deaf student, where you could learn at your own pace without having to work twice as hard as everyone else. Naomi's eyes had filled with tears. I do not know what to say, she signed with trembling hands. This would change everything for Tyler. Then say yes, Ethan replied gently. Let me help. For a moment, Naomi hesitated, and Ethan could see the internal struggle on her face. Pride warred with hope, independence battled with the desire to give her son every opportunity. There must be an application process, she said finally. Requirements, interviews. I can arrange for Tyler to be evaluated next week, Ethan said. But honestly, after talking with him, I know he will be accepted. He is smart, curious, and eager to learn. Any school would be lucky to have him. Tyler bounced in his seat, unable to contain his excitement. Mom, can I really go? Can I really be in a school with other deaf kids? Naomi looked at her son's hopeful face, then back at Ethan. Why? She asked simply. Why would you do this for us? We barely know each other. It was a fair question, and Ethan considered how to answer honestly without revealing too much about his own loneliness, his own need for connection and purpose. Because I know what it is like to be the only deaf person in a hearing world, he said finally. I know how isolating it can be, how much harder everything becomes when you do not have the right support. Tyler deserves better than that. Every deaf child deserves better than that. But this is so generous, Naomi protested. How could we ever repay you? You do not repay kindness, Ethan replied. You pass it forward. Someday when Tyler is grown and successful, maybe he will help another deaf child. That is how it works. Naomi wiped her eyes with her napkin, still struggling to process what was happening. I need to think about this, she said. It is such a big decision. Of course, Ethan said. Take all the time you need. But please know that the offer is genuine, and there are no strings attached. This is simply what the scholarship fund was created for. Do you believe that true generosity exists, or does everyone have hidden motives? This story is about to get even more emotional. Subscribe and let us know in the comments if you think Ethan's offer is too good to be true. Tyler reached over and took his mother's hand. Mom, please say yes, he signed with earnest intensity. I want to go to a school where I can understand everything. I want to have friends who sign. I want to learn without it being so hard all the time. The raw honesty in the child's words seemed to break through Naomi's reservations. Okay, she said, her voice barely a whisper even though only Ethan's eyes could hear her. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Tyler threw his arms around his mother, then turned to hug Ethan with the uninhibited joy of childhood. As Ethan felt the boy's thin arms around his neck, he realized something profound had happened. In trying to help Tyler, he had found something he had been searching for without knowing it, a sense of purpose beyond his own success, a reason to use his wealth for something meaningful. For the first time in his adult life, Ethan felt like his money mattered for something more than just accumulating more money. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of excitement and planning. Ethan explained the enrollment process, the school's curriculum, and the transportation arrangements that would be provided. Naomi asked practical questions about schedules and requirements, while Tyler peppered Ethan with questions about what it would be like to have deaf teachers and deaf classmates. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Naomi pulled Ethan aside while Tyler used the restroom. I want you to know that this is not just about the money, she said quietly. Tyler has never had a positive male role model who shares his experience. Seeing you, talking with you, it is showing him possibilities he never knew existed. He is showing me things too, Ethan replied honestly. Things I forgot I was missing. When they parted ways that evening, Ethan felt lighter than he had in years. He had money and resources, Naomi had love and dedication, and Tyler had potential that just needed the right opportunity to flourish. Together they might all find what they had been missing. 3 weeks later, Tyler was officially enrolled at Riverside Academy for the Deaf. The transformation in the boy was immediate and remarkable. Where he had once been quiet and reserved in public, Tyler now bubbled with stories about his new school, his teachers, and the friends he was making for the first time in his life. Ethan had started visiting Naomi and Tyler regularly, usually bringing dinner or groceries under the pretense of being in the neighborhood. Their apartment was small but immaculately clean, filled with Tyler's artwork and photos of mother and son together. It was more of a home than Ethan's mansion had ever been. "Tell Ethan about your science project," Naomi encouraged as they sat around her small dining table sharing pizza on a Thursday evening. Tyler's face lit up as he began signing rapidly about the volcano he was building with 2 other deaf students. "And Marcus, that is my lab partner, he taught me a new sign for explosion," Tyler said, demonstrating with dramatic hand movements that made them all laugh. "Marcus sounds like a good friend," Ethan replied, enjoying the boy's enthusiasm. "He is. And there is also this girl named Sophia who sits next to me in math class. She is really good at fractions and she helped me understand them when I was confused." Watching Tyler thrive at his new school filled Ethan with a satisfaction he had never experienced in any of his business successes. This was impact he could see and touch, a life being changed in real time. "The teachers say Tyler is reading at grade level now," Naomi added proudly. "In just 3 weeks he has caught up months of lost ground." "That is because he is brilliant," Ethan said, reaching over to ruffle Tyler's hair. "He just needed the right environment to show it." Tyler beamed at the praise, then suddenly grew serious. "Ethan, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever wish you could hear?" It was a question Ethan had been asked many times over the years, usually by well-meaning hearing people who assumed deafness was something he must want to fix. But coming from Tyler, the question felt different, more curious than pitying. "Sometimes," Ethan answered honestly. "When I was younger, I used to wish I could hear music the way I remembered it, or know what my parents' voices sounded like when they were happy instead of frustrated. But as I got older, I realized that being deaf is not something missing from my life. It is just a different way of experiencing the world." "That is what Mom always tells me," Tyler said. "But some of the hearing kids at my old school made me feel broken." "You are not broken," Ethan said firmly. "You are perfect exactly as you are. Being deaf means we experience things differently, not worse. We notice things hearing people miss. We communicate in a beautiful language that most people will never understand. We are part of a community that supports each other in ways the hearing world rarely does." Tyler nodded thoughtfully, processing this perspective. "I like being deaf," he decided. "Especially now that I have friends who are deaf too." After Tyler went to bed, Ethan and Naomi sat on her small couch drinking tea and talking in the comfortable silence that sign language allowed. They could communicate without disturbing Tyler's sleep, their hands moving in the soft lamplight. "You are good with him," Naomi said, watching Ethan with an expression he was beginning to recognize as something deeper than friendship. "He is easy to be good with," Ethan replied. "He is a remarkable kid, Naomi. You should be proud of the job you have done raising him." "I worry sometimes that I am not enough," she admitted. "That he needs a father figure, someone who can teach him things I cannot." "You are more than enough," Ethan said gently. "Tyler is confident, kind, intelligent, and happy. Those things do not happen by accident. They happen because he has a mother who loves him unconditionally and fights for him every day." Naomi's eyes grew soft. "You always know exactly what to say." "I just tell the truth," Ethan replied, though his heart was beating faster as she moved slightly closer to him on the couch. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I have feelings for you," she signed slowly, as if each word required careful consideration. "I know we have not known each other very long, and I know you were just trying to help Tyler, but spending time with you has meant more to me than I think you realize." Ethan's hands stilled completely, his heart hammering in his chest. "Naomi. I know I am probably not what you are used to," she continued, looking down at her hands. "I work 2 jobs, I live in a tiny apartment, I have a child who requires extra attention and resources. I am not sophisticated or wealthy or—" "Stop," Ethan said, reaching out to take her hands in his. "Look at me." When she raised her eyes to meet his, he could see the vulnerability there, the fear of rejection that he recognized because he carried it himself. "You are everything I never knew I was looking for," he told her. "You are kind and strong and beautiful. You are an amazing mother. You make me laugh. You make me feel like I belong somewhere. I have feelings for you too, Naomi. I have had them since the day we met in the park." "Really?" she asked, hope flickering in her expression. Really, he confirmed. I was just afraid to say anything because I thought you might think I was only helping Tyler to get close to you. Is that why you helped him? She asked with a slight smile. No, Ethan said seriously. I helped Tyler because he needed help and I was in a position to give it. But I have kept coming around because I cannot stay away from you. They moved closer together on the couch, the space between them charged with possibility. When Ethan reached up to cup Naomi's face in his hands, she leaned into his touch with a sigh that spoke of loneliness finally finding relief. I have not felt this way about anyone in a very long time, she whispered. Neither have I, he replied, and then their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home. They talked until nearly midnight, sharing stories about their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Ethan told her about his failed marriage, about the years of isolation and the growing certainty that he would spend his life alone. Naomi talked about Tyler's father leaving, about the struggle to make ends meet, about the nights she cried from exhaustion and worry. But mostly they talked about the present, about the unexpected joy of finding each other, about the way Tyler had brought them together and was now thriving in ways neither had dared to hope for. When Ethan finally left that night, he drove home with a lightness in his chest that felt like flying. For the first time in his adult life he was part of something bigger than himself. He had a woman who cared about him not despite his deafness but including it, and a child who looked at him with unconditional admiration and trust. He had a family even if it was not official yet. And that changed everything. 2 months into Tyler's time at Riverside Academy, Ethan had become a regular part of their lives. He joined them for dinners, helped Tyler with homework, and took them on weekend adventures to museums and parks. What had started as friendship had deepened into something that felt permanent and precious. On a rainy Saturday afternoon, while Tyler was at a sleepover with his new friend Marcus, Ethan and Naomi found themselves alone together for the first time in weeks. They sat in Naomi's living room, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched the rain streak down the windows. I need to tell you something, Naomi said quietly, her hands moving slowly in the dim light. Ethan felt his stomach tighten with worry. What is it? Tyler's father contacted me yesterday, she said, not meeting his eyes. He heard about Tyler's new school somehow. He wants to see him. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. After 3 years of nothing? That is what I said, Naomi replied, her expression bitter. He said he has been thinking about Tyler, that he made mistakes he wants to fix. He claims he is ready to be a father now. What did you tell him? I told him no, Naomi said firmly. I told him he gave up the right to call himself Tyler's father when he walked away because having a deaf son was too inconvenient. Ethan pulled her closer, feeling the tension in her body. How do you feel about seeing him again? Angry, she admitted. And scared. What if he tries to take Tyler away from me? What if he has money now and decides he wants custody? He cannot just take Tyler, Ethan said, though he shared her fear. You have been Tyler's only parent for 3 years. No court would remove a child from a loving, stable home. But what if Tyler wants to see him? Naomi asked, voicing the fear that was clearly eating at her. What if Tyler thinks his life would be better with a father who is not embarrassed by his deafness? Tyler loves you, Ethan said simply. You are his whole world, Naomi. One conversation with a stranger who abandoned him is not going to change that. They sat in silence for a while, holding each other while the rain continued outside. Finally, Naomi spoke again. I have never told you the whole story about why he left, she said. You do not have to, Ethan replied. If it is too painful. I want to, she said. I need you to understand why I am so scared. Ethan waited, giving her the time and space she needed to find the words. When Tyler was born, the doctors told us immediately that he was deaf, Naomi began. Complete sensorineural hearing loss, they said. James, Tyler's father, he just shut down. He would not hold Tyler, would not help with feedings or diaper changes. He acted like Tyler was broken. Ethan felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his expression neutral, not wanting to interrupt. I thought he just needed time to adjust, Naomi continued. So I threw myself into learning everything I could about raising a deaf child. I found early intervention programs, started learning sign language, connected with other parents of deaf children. I thought if I could show James that Tyler's deafness was not the end of the world, he would come around. But he did not, Ethan said gently. He got worse, Naomi replied, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. He started staying at work later, going out with friends on weekends, anything to avoid being home with us. When Tyler was 6 months old, James sat me down and told me he could not do it anymore. He said he had never signed up to raise a disabled child. The word disabled came out with such venom that Ethan could tell it still hurt Naomi to repeat it. He said Tyler would never be normal, never have a real life, never be able to support himself. He said I was being selfish by not putting Tyler in an institution where people who know how to deal with these kinds of problems could take care of him. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. The idea of anyone talking about Tyler that way, of anyone suggesting that this bright, funny, loving child belonged in an institution, made him physically sick. When I refused, when I told him Tyler was staying with me no matter what, James packed his bags, Naomi said. He told me I was ruining my life for a child who would never appreciate the sacrifice. He said he would not watch me destroy myself trying to fix something that could not be fixed. He was wrong about everything, Ethan said fiercely. Tyler is not broken. He does not need to be fixed. And you did not ruin your life, you saved it. You saved both your lives. I know that now, Naomi said, leaning into his embrace. But for a long time I worried that maybe James was right. Maybe I was being selfish keeping Tyler with me when he might have had better opportunities elsewhere. You gave Tyler the most important thing any child can have, Ethan told her. A parent who loves him exactly as he is. Everything else, education, resources, opportunities, those things can be provided by other people. But unconditional love can only come from family. They held each other as the storm outside grew stronger, and Ethan found himself sharing his own painful memories. My parents reacted similarly when I lost my hearing, he said. Not as badly as James, but they definitely saw my deafness as a tragedy that had ruined their plans for me. How old were you when it happened? Naomi asked. 12. Old enough to remember what sound was like, old enough to understand that everything had changed, Ethan replied. The accident was not anyone's fault. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit our car. I had a traumatic brain injury that affected my auditory processing centers. That must have been terrifying. The hearing loss was actually the least traumatic part of my recovery, Ethan said. What hurt more was watching my parents struggle to communicate with me, seeing them look at me with pity and disappointment. Did they learn sign language? Ethan shook his head. They tried briefly. But they found it too difficult, too time-consuming. They preferred to write notes or speak slowly and hope I could read their lips. Family dinners became silent affairs where I sat by myself while everyone else had conversations I could not follow. That sounds incredibly isolating. It was, Ethan agreed. By the time I graduated high school, I felt like a stranger in my own family. When I left for college, I think everyone was relieved, them because they did not have to worry about accommodating my deafness, and me because I could finally stop pretending to be someone I was not. Do you still talk to them? Occasionally. They are proud of my business success, but they still see my deafness as a limitation I have overcome rather than simply part of who I am. They do not understand that I do not want to be cured or fixed. Naomi turned in his arms to face him directly. Their loss, she said firmly. You are an incredible man, Ethan. Not in spite of being deaf, but including all of who you are. Tyler is going to be an incredible man too, Ethan replied. Because he has a mother who sees his potential instead of his limitations. What if James tries to convince Tyler that his life would be better in the hearing world? Naomi asked, returning to her earlier fear. Then Tyler will remember that he already tried the hearing world, and it made him feel stupid and isolated, Ethan said. He will remember that his deaf world is full of friends and teachers who understand him, and a mother who fought to give him every opportunity to thrive. And you, Naomi said softly. He will remember that his deaf world brought him you. The simple statement carried so much weight that Ethan felt his throat tighten with emotion. Yes, he agreed. And I will remember that my deaf world brought me both of you. As the storm outside began to calm, Ethan realized that their conversation had done something unexpected. In sharing their painful pasts, they had not driven each other away, they had grown closer. They understood now that both of them carried scars from people who had failed to love them as they were, and that made their current love for each other even more precious. They had both been abandoned by people who should have stayed. They were not going to make that mistake with each other. I have been thinking about something, Ethan said as he and Naomi sat on a bench watching Tyler play with his friends at the school playground. It was a Friday afternoon, and several Riverside Academy families had gathered for an informal picnic. What is it? Naomi asked, though her attention was partially focused on Tyler, who was animatedly telling a story to 3 other children in rapid sign language. I want to expand the scholarship program, Ethan said. Not just for Riverside Academy, but for deaf schools across the country. I want to create a foundation that provides full educational support for deaf children whose families cannot afford it. Naomi turned to look at him with surprise. That sounds amazing, but it would be a huge undertaking. I know, Ethan replied. And I cannot do it alone. I would need someone to help me run it, someone who understands the challenges deaf families face, someone who knows what these children need to succeed. You would need to hire someone with experience in nonprofit management, Naomi said thoughtfully. Maybe someone with an education background? I would need you, Ethan said simply. Naomi's hands stopped moving mid-sentence. Me? You understand the system from a parent's perspective, Ethan explained. You know what families go through when they are trying to find resources for their deaf children. You have lived the struggle of choosing between rent money and speech therapy, between groceries and specialized education programs. But I do not have any experience running a foundation, Naomi protested. Experience can be learned, Ethan said. Passion and understanding cannot be taught. You have both. Tyler ran over to them, his face flushed with excitement from playing. Mom, did you see me tell Marcus about the time we went to the zoo? He signed rapidly. He thought the part about the monkey taking your hat was hilarious. I saw, Naomi replied, smiling at her son's enthusiasm. You are getting very good at storytelling. Marcus invited me to sleep over next weekend, Tyler continued. His mom said she would teach us how to make homemade pizza. Can I go? We will see, Naomi said, which Tyler correctly interpreted as, probably yes, based on his delighted grin. As Tyler ran back to his friends, Naomi returned her attention to Ethan's proposal. Tell me more about this foundation idea. I am imagining something comprehensive, Ethan said, his hands moving with growing excitement as he outlined his vision. Not just tuition assistance, but also funding for hearing aids and assistive technology, transportation to specialized schools, support for parents learning sign language, advocacy for better deaf education policies. That would change everything for so many families, Naomi said, her eyes bright with possibility. Exactly. And I want you to be the executive director. You would oversee all the programs, work with families to determine their needs, coordinate with schools and service providers. You would be the heart of the operation. Naomi was quiet for a long moment, watching Tyler laugh with his friends. What about my current jobs? She asked practically. You would quit them, Ethan said. The foundation would pay you a competitive salary, full benefits, and flexible hours so you can still be available for Tyler when he needs you. Ethan, this is incredible, but... Naomi paused, clearly struggling with something. But what? I do not want you to feel like you have to take care of me, she said quietly. I do not want our relationship to be about me needing your help. Ethan took her hands in his, looking directly into her eyes. This is not about me taking care of you. This is about us building something meaningful together. I have money and business experience, but I do not have your insight into what families actually need. You have lived experience and compassion, but you do not have resources to scale your impact. Together, we could help hundreds of children like Tyler. You really think I could do this? Naomi asked, vulnerability clear in her expression. I know you could, Ethan replied firmly. You advocated for Tyler when no one else would. You researched schools and programs and fought to get him the best education possible. You have already been doing this work. Now we would just give you the resources to do it for other families too. A slow smile spread across Naomi's face. I would love to help other parents who are going through what I went through, she said. The isolation, the confusion, the feeling like you are fighting the system alone. So you will do it? Yes, Naomi said, her decision made. Yes, I want to build this with you. They spent the rest of the afternoon discussing logistics and dreaming about the impact they could have. Other parents at the picnic overheard their conversation and began sharing their own stories about struggling to find resources for their deaf children. There should be a place where parents can go to get all the information they need, said Marcus's mother. When Marcus was first diagnosed, I spent months calling different agencies and getting transferred from person to person. And someone who can help navigate the insurance system, added Sophia's father. The paperwork alone is overwhelming, especially when you are still learning sign language and trying to communicate with your child. We could create a resource center, Naomi said to Ethan. One-stop support for newly diagnosed families. With peer mentoring, Ethan added. Parents who have been through it helping parents who are just starting the journey. As the sun began to set and families started packing up their picnic supplies, Tyler came over to join Ethan and Naomi. What have you two been talking about all afternoon? He asked curiously. We are going to start a foundation to help deaf children go to good schools, Naomi explained. Like the scholarship that helped you get into Riverside Academy. Tyler's eyes went wide. You mean other kids will get to have friends who sign and teachers who understand them? That is exactly what we mean, Ethan said. Tyler threw his arms around both of them in an enthusiastic group hug. That is the best idea ever, he declared. Can I help too? Of course you can help, Naomi said, laughing at her son's eagerness. You can tell us what kids really need and want in their schools. And you can help us understand what it is like to be a deaf student, Ethan added. Your perspective will be very important. As they walked to the car together, Tyler between them chattering about ideas for the foundation, Ethan felt a completeness he had never experienced before. He had found his purpose, not just in building a successful business, but in using his resources to create lasting change. More importantly, he had found his family, people who saw his worth beyond his wealth, who valued his contributions beyond his ability to provide financial support. That night, after Tyler had gone to bed, Ethan and Naomi sat at her kitchen table with laptops and legal pads, sketching out their plans for the foundation. They would call it Silent Dreams Foundation, with a mission to ensure that every deaf child had access to the education and resources they needed to reach their full potential. I love that we are building this together, Naomi said as they took a break from planning. I love everything we are building together, Ethan replied, reaching across the table to take her hand. The foundation, Tyler's future, us, Naomi said, understanding his meaning. All of it, Ethan confirmed. I never imagined my life could feel this full. Neither did I, Naomi said softly. For so long, it was just Tyler and me against the world. I never thought we would find someone who wanted to be part of our team. Your team is my team now, Ethan said. For as long as you will have me. Forever, Naomi replied without hesitation. We want you forever. Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime energy, but inside Naomi's small apartment, three hearts had found their home in each other. They were building something beautiful together, a foundation, a future, and a love that would change not only their own lives, but the lives of countless children who would benefit from their shared dream. 6 months later, the Silent Dreams Foundation was officially launched with a grand opening ceremony at Riverside Academy. Local news stations covered the event, featuring interviews with families who had already benefited from the foundation's programs. Tyler, now 9 and thriving academically, served as the foundation's first youth ambassador. Today marks the beginning of something truly special, Naomi said to the assembled crowd, her words being interpreted into sign language for the many deaf attendees. Every child deserves the chance to learn and grow in an environment where they are understood and valued. Silent Dreams Foundation is committed to making that chance a reality. Ethan watched from the side of the auditorium, his heart swelling with pride as he observed Naomi in her element. She had transformed from a worried single mother working 2 jobs into a confident leader who commanded respect from educators, parents, and community members alike. Her natural compassion and keen understanding of family needs had made her an instant success as the foundation's executive director. In just 6 months, Silent Dreams had provided scholarships to 32 children, funded hearing aids and assistive technology for dozens more, and launched a parent support network that was already being replicated in other cities. The foundation's success had exceeded even Ethan's ambitious expectations. But tonight was not about the foundation's achievements. Tonight was about something much more personal. After the ceremony ended and the last guests had departed, Ethan, Naomi, and Tyler headed back to what had become their routine Friday night celebration spot, the same park where Ethan and Naomi had first met. It had become a tradition to end significant days with a walk through the space that had brought them together. I cannot believe how many people came tonight, Tyler sighed as they strolled along the familiar paths. Mrs. Rodriguez said it was the biggest event Riverside Academy has ever hosted. That is because people are excited about what we are doing, Naomi replied, her arm linked through Ethan's as they walked. When you give people hope, they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Speaking of being part of something bigger, Ethan said, his heart starting to race with nervous anticipation. I have a surprise for you both. What kind of surprise? Tyler asked, immediately intrigued. The kind that requires us to walk over to that tree, Ethan said, pointing to the large oak where he and Naomi had sat during their first conversation almost a year ago. As they approached the tree, Naomi noticed something different. Soft white lights had been strung in the branches, creating a gentle glow in the evening darkness. On the ground beneath the tree, a small crowd of people was gathering. Tyler's classmates from Riverside Academy, their families, and several members of the local deaf community. "Ethan, what is this?" Naomi asked, confusion and excitement mixing in her expression. "This is me asking you a question," Ethan replied, his hands moving slowly and deliberately as the crowd formed a circle around them. Tyler's eyes went wide as he realized what was happening. "Mom," he signed urgently, "I think Ethan is going to—" "Shoo," Naomi said, though she was smiling as tears began to form in her eyes. Ethan took both of Naomi's hands in his, looking directly into her eyes as he began to speak in the language that had brought them together. "A year ago I was alone," he said, his signs visible to everyone in the circle. "I had everything I thought I wanted, success, money, recognition, but I had no one to share it with. I felt invisible in a world that did not understand me, isolated despite being surrounded by people." Several members of the crowd nodded in recognition, understanding the loneliness he described. "Then I met you," Ethan continued, never taking his eyes off Naomi's face. "You and Tyler showed me what love looks like when it is not complicated by frustration or embarrassment. You taught me that family is not about sharing DNA. It is about choosing to support each other, to celebrate each other's differences, to build dreams together." Naomi's tears were flowing freely now, though her smile was radiant. "You believed in my vision for Silent Dreams, but more importantly, you made it your own. You took my money and ideas and turned them into something that actually helps families. You made my resources meaningful." "Tyler," Ethan said, turning to include the boy in his proposal, "you showed me what it means to be proud of who you are. Watching you thrive at Riverside Academy, seeing you embrace your deafness as a strength rather than a limitation, you taught me to love myself in ways I never thought possible." Tyler was bouncing on his toes with excitement, clearly bursting to say something but waiting for Ethan to finish. "So," Ethan said, reaching into his pocket and dropping to one knee, "I have a question for both of you." The small velvet box in his hand contained a simple but elegant diamond ring, chosen specifically because Naomi had once mentioned that she preferred classic styles over elaborate designs. "Naomi Washington," Ethan said, his voice steady despite his racing heart, "will you marry me? And Tyler, will you let me be your dad?" For a moment, the park was completely silent except for the soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. Then Tyler broke the quiet with an enthusiastic shout that needed no translation. "Yes," he signed rapidly, bouncing up and down. "Yes, yes, yes. Mom, say yes." Naomi was laughing and crying at the same time, her hands shaking as she looked from the ring to Ethan's hopeful face to Tyler's ecstatic expression. "Yes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course, yes." The crowd erupted in celebration as Ethan slipped the ring onto Naomi's finger and pulled both her and Tyler into a tight embrace. Around them, friends old and new applauded and signed their congratulations, creating a joyful chaos of movement and emotion. "Did you plan all this?" Naomi asked as she admired the ring on her finger. "Tyler helped," Ethan admitted. "He suggested we do it here where we first met. And he picked out most of the people to invite. I wanted everyone who cares about us to be here," Tyler said proudly. "Marcus, Sophia, all my teachers, everyone from the foundation." "It is perfect," Naomi said, pulling Tyler close while maintaining her hold on Ethan. "All of it is perfect." As the celebration continued around them, with children running between the adults and families taking pictures under the twinkling lights, Ethan marveled at how completely his life had changed. A year ago, he had been a successful but lonely man who measured his worth by his bank account. Tonight, he was surrounded by people who valued him for his kindness, his commitment to their community, and his love for the woman and child who had become his everything. "I love you," he signed to Naomi, the words carrying the weight of every lonely night that had led him to this moment. "I love you too," she replied. "We both do." Tyler looked up at them with a grin that seemed to light up the entire park. "Can I call you Dad now?" he asked Ethan. "I would be honored," Ethan replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Dad," Tyler said experimentally, then laughed with delight. "I have a dad." As they walked home together under the stars, Tyler between them chattering about wedding plans and whether he could have two best men at the ceremony, Ethan felt a profound sense of completion. He had found his purpose in helping other deaf children achieve their dreams, but, more importantly, he had found his family in these two incredible people who had chosen to love him exactly as he was. The engagement ring on Naomi's finger caught the light from the street lamps as they walked, a symbol of promises made and dreams shared. Tomorrow they would start planning their wedding, continue building their foundation, and navigate the beautiful complexities of becoming a blended family. But tonight, they were simply three people who had found each other against all odds, walking home together in perfect, comfortable silence. The wedding ceremony took place on a bright Saturday morning in the garden behind Riverside Academy, with over 200 guests in attendance. What made the celebration unique was that every word of the ceremony was conducted in American Sign Language, creating a visual symphony of movement and meaning that translated the most important moments into the language of hands and hearts. Naomi walked down the aisle wearing a flowing white dress with blue accents, Tyler proudly escorting her as the man of honor. Her bridal bouquet contained white roses and blue delphiniums, and her veil had been her grandmother's, something old to honor the past alongside something new to celebrate the future. Ethan waited at the altar wearing a navy blue suit that complemented Naomi's dress colors, his eyes never leaving her face as she approached. The officiant, a deaf minister who had known Ethan since college, stood ready to guide them through vows that would be as visible as they were meaningful. "We gather today to witness the union of Ethan and Naomi," the minister signed to the assembled crowd, "and to celebrate the formation of a family built on love, understanding, and shared purpose." The deaf guests in the audience created a gentle visual murmur of appreciation, their hands moving in small gestures of agreement and support. Hearing guests who did not sign watched with fascination as the ceremony unfolded in graceful movements that needed no sound to convey their emotional power. "Ethan," the minister continued, "please share your vows with Naomi." Ethan took Naomi's hands in his signs clear and deliberate as he spoke from his heart. "Naomi, before I met you, I thought success meant accumulating wealth and achievements that would prove my worth to a world that saw me as limited. You taught me that true success means finding people who see your whole self, including your differences, as something to celebrate rather than overcome." Several guests wiped their eyes as Ethan continued. "You showed me that love is not about fixing each other or making each other fit into predetermined molds. It is about supporting each other's growth, sharing each other's dreams, and building something beautiful together that neither of us could create alone." Tyler, standing nearby as the ring bearer, was beaming with pride as he watched his soon-to-be father express his love for his mother. "I promise to support your work with Silent Dreams Foundation, to be a loving father to Tyler, and to never let you forget how extraordinary you are. I promise to sign with you in crowded rooms, to laugh with you in quiet moments, and to love you in all the languages we share, spoken, signed, and felt." Naomi's own vows were equally moving as she promised to honor Ethan's journey from isolation to belonging, to continue building their foundation together, and to create a home where deafness was celebrated as a difference that enriched their family rather than limited it. "I promise to love you not despite who you are, but because of who you are," she signed. "Your deafness brought us together, your kindness kept us together, and your vision for helping others will keep us growing together for the rest of our lives." Tyler stepped forward to present the rings, his own small speech prepared for the occasion. "Ethan, thank you for showing me that being deaf is something to be proud of," he signed to his new father. "And thank you for loving Mom and me enough to make us a real family." There was not a dry eye in the audience as Tyler hugged both Ethan and Naomi, his joy infectious and pure. The ring exchange that followed was conducted entirely in sign language, with the minister guiding Ethan and Naomi through promises that were both traditional and deeply personal. When they were finally pronounced husband and wife, their kiss was witnessed by a celebration of hands raised in applause, the visual equivalent of thunderous approval from their community of friends and family. The reception that followed featured a unique blend of hearing and deaf traditions. Instead of clinking glasses to encourage the newlyweds to kiss, guests waved their hands in the air, the deaf equivalent of applause. The wedding cake was decorated with sugar flowers and sign language poses spelling out love, and the centerpieces included small cards explaining basic sign language phrases so hearing guests could communicate with deaf attendees. Tyler served as the master of ceremonies for the reception, his confidence in front of the crowd a testament to how much he had grown in the past year. He introduced speakers who shared stories about Ethan and Naomi's relationship, the impact of Silent Dreams Foundation, and the joy of watching their family come together. "My mom used to worry that I would never have a dad," Tyler signed to the crowd during his speech. "But she was wrong. I did not need just any dad, I needed the right dad. And Ethan is definitely the right dad for me." The wedding featured performances by deaf musicians who used visual rhythm and movement to create music that could be felt and seen rather than heard. Dancing continued late into the evening with hearing and deaf guests learning from each other and creating a celebration that truly bridged both worlds. By now, you have followed Ethan, Naomi, and Tyler through an incredible journey of love conquering loneliness. Has this story touched your heart the way it has touched ours? Subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Which moment made you believe in the power of true love? As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Ethan, Naomi, and Tyler found themselves sitting together at the head table, still wearing their wedding attire but finally able to relax and absorb what had happened. "How does it feel to be married?" Tyler asked, looking between his parents with curiosity. "It feels like coming home," Naomi replied, taking Ethan's hand. "It feels like the beginning of our real life together," Ethan added. "Everything before today was just practice for this." Tyler grinned and moved to sit between them, wrapping his arms around both his parents. "I love our family," he announced with the simple honesty that only children possessed. "So do we," Ethan and Naomi said in unison, their signs overlapping in perfect synchronization. As they sat together in the soft light of the reception tent, surrounded by the remnants of their celebration, all three of them felt the profound satisfaction of belonging exactly where they were supposed to be. Ethan had gone from isolated millionaire to beloved husband and father. Naomi had transformed from struggling single mother to confident foundation leader and cherished wife. Tyler had evolved from lonely deaf child to thriving student with two parents who celebrated his every achievement. But perhaps most importantly, they had created something together that was larger than the sum of their individual parts. Silent Dreams Foundation continued to grow, helping dozens of families navigate the challenges of raising deaf children. Their home had become a gathering place for the local deaf community, hosting dinners and celebrations that brought people together across generational and cultural lines. 6 months after the wedding, as they sat around their breakfast table on a Sunday morning, Tyler working on a science project, Naomi reviewing foundation applications, and Ethan reading business reports, the quiet contentment of their daily routine felt like the greatest luxury imaginable. "What are you thinking about?" Naomi asked, noticing Ethan's contemplative expression. "I was thinking about that first day in the park," he replied. "How lonely I was, how certain I was that I would spend my life alone. And now?" Tyler asked, looking up from his project. "Now I cannot imagine life any other way," Ethan said, reaching out to include both Tyler and Naomi in a spontaneous group hug. "You two saved me in ways you will never fully understand." "You saved us too," Naomi replied softly. "We were surviving before we met you, but we were not truly living. And now we are," Tyler added with satisfaction. "We are living and loving and helping other people live and love too." Outside their window, the city continued its bustling pace, but inside their home, three hearts beat in perfect rhythm. They had found each other across the barriers of silence and circumstance, building a love story that proved kindness and hope could overcome any obstacle. Ethan Rodriguez was no longer the deaf millionaire who spent his birthday alone. He was a husband, father, and philanthropist whose life had been transformed by the simple act of stepping outside his comfort zone and approaching two strangers in a park. Naomi Washington was no longer the exhausted single mother working 2 jobs to provide for her deaf son. She was a foundation executive, beloved wife, and proud mother whose strength and wisdom were changing lives across the country. Tyler Washington Rodriguez was no longer the isolated deaf child struggling in a hearing world. He was a confident student, foundation ambassador, and beloved son whose bright future stretched endlessly ahead of him. Together, they had created something beautiful, a family built on acceptance, a foundation built on hope, and a love story that proved the most profound connections often come from the most unexpected encounters. Their story was proof that love does not need sound to be heard, that families do not need to share blood to share bonds, and that the greatest wealth is not measured in dollars but in the depth of human connections that make life meaningful. In the end, the deaf millionaire's silent love story became a symphony of belonging that would echo through generations of families helped by Silent Dreams Foundation, and through the hearts of everyone who witnessed the power of love to transform even the loneliest life into something extraordinary.